Formula One, as we all know, is extremely profitable. The $12 million cars, $50 million sponsorships, and, of course, the enormously wealthy superstars that make Formula One what it is. Of course, I'm talking about the drivers now. As I detailed in my driver's salary video, Formula One drivers are paid a lot of money to race these magnificent vehicles, with an average compensation of just under $10 million. To be precise, young rookies are paid roughly $1 million, while seasoned veterans are paid upwards of $25 million, and that's before bonuses. So, assuming a 7-year career in Formula One, drivers can expect to earn roughly $70 million in total compensation, not including bonuses. So, while driving in Formula One can make you quite wealthy, what makes an F1 driver wealthier than the rest is what they do off the track, whether it's media work, entrepreneurship, investments, or endorsements. Many Formula One drivers have made significant sums of money after retiring from competitive racing. So, let's have a look at the top 10 wealthiest Formula One drivers of all time. Before I get into the numbers, let me mention that the net worths I provide are not 100% precise because it's nearly difficult to have an exact amount. However, they were compiled from a variety of sites that all reference similar figures, so they're the most accurate estimates I could come up with. So, let's start with number 10, which is the well-known face of Nico Rosberg, who has a net worth of $50 million. In 2016, this German motorsport legend won the title and has 23 Grand Prix wins in total. But when it comes to his profits throughout the course of his career, a significant portion of his earnings came from his time at Mercedes-Benz. He earned $20 million in his championship year alone, and he had many winning streaks throughout his successful stint with Mercedes, which no doubt earned him some very lucrative bonuses. Since retiring from Formula One in 2016, Nico has pursued various entrepreneurial ventures, including media work in the form of TV sports commentary, a YouTube channel, and his podcast Beyond Victory. Investing in a variety of startup enterprises that promote renewable energy and clean transportation, as well as Formula E, and founding his own Extreme E team, Rosberg X Racing, as well as serving as a brand ambassador for Heineken and Rolex. One thing is certain, since leaving the grid, Nico hasn't sat back and relaxed. Moving up to 9th place on the list of the wealthiest Formula One drivers is David Coulthard, who has an estimated net worth of $80 million. Coulthard has followed a similar path as Nico Rosberg in amassing his fortune. To begin with, he had a rather successful Formula One career, winning 13 races and finishing second in the championship in 2001. He drove for companies including Williams, McLaren, and Red Bull over his 15 years in the sport. In doing so, he accumulated a sizable wealth when he retired at the end of the 2008 season, although he gained the most of his fortune after leaving Formula One and entering the world of media and business. He stepped into sports commentary for Channel 4 and participated in the humorous podcast on the marbles, similar to Nico Rosberg. He's also the author of his own book, The Winning Formula, which no doubt brings in some steady revenue, but he's made the most of his money by founding his own businesses. In 2010, he founded Whisper Films, which produces the majority of Channel 4's Formula One coverage, as well as certain other clients. After that, in 2016, he launched Velocity Experience, a firm that specialized in creating brand experiences for businesses and clients. Thus, DC has done rather well for himself. Moving on to the next driver in the 8th position, we have Eddie Irvine, who has a net worth of $120 million. While he didn't achieve as much as the others on the list, he still had a respectable Formula One career, winning 4 races and finishing second in 1999 and earning just north of $40 million over his 10 years in the sport. When it comes to Eddie, he's earned most of his money in a slightly different way than the others. He began investing in property before he even entered Formula One, and he continued to do so throughout his career until his retirement in 2002, when he owned several properties and complexes all over the world, including the Chris Hardo developments, which include 50 flats. His other notable properties include a school that he purchased in 2012 and converted into housing, as well as a sports complex in Bangor. With a net worth of $140 million, Sebastian Vettel, the first current driver and the youngest driver on the list, is now in 7th place on the list of Formula One's wealthiest drivers. It's no secret that Seb has had a lot of success in Formula One since his debut in 2007. I can go on and on about his 4 world titles, 53 wins, and 57 pole positions. So, it's no surprise that the majority of Seb's wealth has come from the accumulation of salaries and bonuses over his 15 or so years in the sport, which just goes to show how much money there is in the sport. But it's also not surprising that he's so wealthy because he's driven for some of the sport's biggest teams, who can afford to pay him significant sums. He was paid in excess of $20 million per year at Red Bull before going to Ferrari, when his salary was doubled to $40 million. And now he is paid a cool $15 million at Aston Martin. So you can see why Seb is at the top of this list. Jenson Button, who has a net worth of $150 million, is the fan favorite who comes in 6th place. Jenson's method of accumulating wealth is very similar to DC and Nico Rosberg. Let's have a look. As we all know, Jenson had a very successful Formula One career, winning 15 races and winning the World Championship in 2009, which allowed him to earn a nice living over his 17 years in the sport. Unlike the rest, he made a lot of money after Formula One. He's one of the main commentators for Sky Sports, the author of 2 books, and a brand ambassador for companies like Hilton Hotels, Hugo Boss, Head & Shoulders, and Targ Heuer. But he's also thrown himself into the management side of Formula One and 2 by serving as a technical advisor for Williams F1 and starting his own Extreme E team, JBXE, which competes against fellow rich person on the list Nico Rosberg. Jenson isn't one to play around. Now we're in the top 5, and the numbers start to skyrocket. With a net worth of $185 million, Formula One veteran Alain Prost is ranked 5th. For those who aren't familiar with Alain Prost, he is a 4-time world champion with 51 victories and 33 pole positions, making him one of the best drivers of all time. His fortune stemmed from a combination of a successful Formula One career with a large pay and bonuses, as well as what he did after retiring from the sport in 1993. Alain's most well-known endeavor was forming his own Formula One team, Prost Grand Prix, for the 1997 season. To be honest, it was a bit of a flop. They only managed 3 podium finishes before being forced to retire from the sport in 2002. Prost even called it his worst mistake ever, but he went on to assist Renault enter Formula E in 2014 and now serves as the non-executive chairman of Renault Sport Limited. Alpine is owned by that firm. And speaking about Alpine, Fernando Alonso, who has a wealth of $240 million, is in 4th position on the list. What makes Alonso extremely wealthy is the fact that he has been driving in Formula One for a long time, 20 years to be exact, and has been paid millions every year, including $30 million plus in his later days at McLaren, $40 million plus at Ferrari from 2010 to 2014, and currently $20 million at Alpine. So, unlike anybody else on this list, we can expect his fortune to climb even further. For example, when he raced for Toyota in the World Endurance Championship, he was paid tens of millions of dollars. Not only was his work profitable, but he was also sponsored by Adidas, Bang & Olufsen, and Citibank, and he launched his own clothing line, Kamoa, in 2016. With a net worth of $250 million, fellow F1 veteran Kimi Räikkönen has climbed into the top 3 richest drivers of all time, barely ahead of Alonso. Kimi has been in the sport for 20 years, just like Alonso. As a result, his career earnings account for the majority of his net worth. When analyzing his career earnings since joining Ferrari in 2007, he earned the most of his money there, including being paid over $21 million in 2010 to not even drive in order to make way for Fernando Alonso. He was given about $20 million for his Lotus points bonuses alone, which nearly bankrupted the Lotus team. In 2021, he was paid $10 million to drive for the Alfa Romeo team, but we had to say goodbye to Kimi at the end of the 2021 season as he retired. But I have no doubt that his fortune will continue to grow as he pursues new business opportunities, such as his passion for motorcycles. We'll have to wait and see. Now on to the top 2, who, by a long shot, are also the most successful Formula One drivers of all time. With a net worth of $285 million, 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton is ranked 2nd on the list, not only because of his career earnings, but also because of how much he is paid when he isn't racing around the world. Lewis is on the higher end of this list. Let's start with his career earnings to get a sense of how much he's made over the course of his 14 years in Formula One. Lewis Hamilton made $430,160,000, with 81% of that coming from his 8 seasons at Mercedes-Benz, when he earned at least $30 million every year. Now, it's evident that he's made $430 million, but only has a net worth of $285 million. That's primarily due to taxes and other fees. So, aside from being one of the most paid athletes in the world, Lewis Hamilton is a highly marketable individual who has landed endorsement deals with Bose, Mercedes, Puma, Sony, Tommy Hilfiger, and Vodafone, some of which are for tens of millions of dollars. We can anticipate Lewis to continue to earn substantial sums and to expand his great riches as long as the fire inside him burns brightly. However, if $285 million is considered tremendous fortune, the top rank is enormous. It's none other than Michael Schumacher, who has a net worth of $780 million and is on his way to becoming Formula One's first billionaire. But why is Schumi roughly 3 times as valuable as Lewis? Schumacher, along with Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods, was a global sporting superstar during his prime with Ferrari in the early 2000s, and this is reflected in his career earnings. We couldn't discover a precise figure, but he earned over $1 billion during his 16 seasons in the sport. Thanks to his yearly earnings of between $80 and $100 million for Ferrari at his prime years, when he wasn't racing, he made roughly $50 million a year through endorsements and brand partnerships. When you add it all together, you get a staggering total. Schumacher was so appealing to companies that the German finance firm Deutsche Vermögensberatung paid Schumi $8 million a year to wear a hat with their logo on it. It's tough to put into words the impact Schumacher had not only on the world of motorsport, but on all of sport, as evidenced by the fact that he's the 5th most paid athlete of all time, behind only Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Arnold Palmer, and Jack Nicklaus. That concludes the list of the 10 wealthiest Formula One drivers of all time. Were you shocked by the people or the list, or did you anticipate someone else to be there? We'd love to hear your thoughts, so post them in the comments area below. And as usual, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified of new videos.